welcome to the BUSKA Podcast, and I am super excited for this episode with Drew Korf. He owns Storyline Media and also has a podcast called Pressed for Presence. And he was in town filming a few episodes, and so we decided to do a podcast together while he was here. And let me tell you, I think it is one of the best episodes that we have ever filmed. Drew is a super just go-getter guy that is really fun to be around. I mean, I think that you'll be able to see it inside of the episode. We go through all of his entrepreneurial steps and journeys to get to kind of where he is, and also just talk about the mind frame, some of the things that we do to kind of bring peace into this entrepreneurial world. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this episode and let me know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think it did. I think it's so important to have stuff like that because it's finding a way to keep the passion alive in your creative ventures. I think is so huge because with something like that, like it can get tedious when you're doing like a similar podcast over and over again, or if you're like doing the same sort of functions in your business. But as soon as you're able to like do something where there is very little pressure and it's just for kind of for fun, I think that is super important because it keeps that creative spark alive.
Yeah, I mean, you go through those valleys and those peaks and valleys in business like over and over and over again, where you're loving what you're doing and then you're hating what you're doing, loving what you're doing. And so like I was telling my girlfriend about like the burnt or buttered. She's just like, because she got really mad at me one day because she came in and I was like editing a burnt or buttered episode, and we just had a baby and stuff, and she was like, I was just so annoyed because you're just doing something for fun and like, you know, whatever. I was like, this is not just for fun. I was like, mentally, I have to do this to stay sane.
For sure.
Like, there's so many problems that I deal with every single day. Like, you're putting out fires all day long, every single day. I need something that I just need to be able to look forward to.
For sure.
Like once a week.
And it's so hard to explain sometimes too, because I think that the way that we're wired as entrepreneurs sometimes, I think that it allows us to be in a spot where instead of just like taking everything off of our plate to relax or to recharge, we almost add something. It's like adding a creative venture where we get to still be doing something and moving and like going forward towards something, but it is our relaxation.
Yeah. And like you have Alex Ramosi that humbles me like every single time I listen to him about saying no, you know, like not adding those things because, you know, over the years, you're just constantly adding, and you're just like, oh, it's fun, it's new, you know, and you're not like looking at that one thing that is actually going to make you reach that next level, is actually going to like, you know, help you scale. And you're just getting distraction. And so I've been trying to like get way better about that, of what is actually valuable in the things that I'm adding on. Like, is this adding like lessons, or am I like becoming a better person, or all these things, or is this just a distraction away from the really sucky part of scaling that I don't want to do?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest questions that I've been asking myself lately is like, for what? And that's one of the things that's really hard to keep in the back of my mind when a Hermosi video pops up or something like that, because there are times where I think that I would willingly sacrifice speed of scale or how big the scale is or something like that to optimize for my day-to-day. Like there are going to be times where, yes, I could have scaled and gotten to X amount of MRR a little bit earlier. I could have done whatever, but I would have been a very miserable person if I did that. And so it's like, I'm adding this creative venture. I'm adding this thing that's not technically like aligned with the big vision, because I don't want to be burnt out, start being irritable to be around, and like, I don't know. So I think that there are times where, even though in a business sense, it might not make sense for you to add a quote unquote distraction, I think from a life sense, it definitely does, if that's why you're doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, it's just kind of the person that I am, you know. I didn't know I had ADHD till I was like 30 years old.
Interesting.
But then figuring that out, I'm just like, oh, freaking everything makes sense now,
yeah.
you know? And with that, like, I can focus on something so much that I become decently good at it in a very short amount of time.
Okay.
And so that just like leads me to, you know, jump from thing to thing to thing, because it's so fun to like become efficient at something.
Right.
And I know that process. And I know that I'm good at that.
Yeah.
And so whether it's like rock climbing or skydiving, base jumping, or like, you know, like mountain biking, whatever it is, it's just like, oh, you just dive into it because it's fun, it's new, and then you become decently good at it. And then you're like, okay, what's next? You know, where's the new thing? And I think for me, like, there's different types of entrepreneurs, you know, all the time, all over the place. And I'm definitely the entrepreneur that loves freedom. You know, that's the only reason why I started my businesses and got into that mode of wanting to work for myself, is because I wanted to control my life, and I wanted to have the ability to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to have the ability to learn all those fun different things, you know, and have the means to do that. And so with that, I think every entrepreneur kind of has a origin story, or like a thing that catapulted them into wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to do something different with their life. And so what was that for you?
There are definitely a couple moments. The first one, like kind of like the tongue-in-cheek, like funny, I knew that I thought a little bit differently, was actually on the playground over at Maple Grove Elementary School. Nice. I was a bit of a nerd growing up. I like had the whole, like, played a lot of sports, but was also very nerdy and would spend 8 hours playing World of Warcraft some days of the summer. But I got really into Yu-Gi-Oh when I was a kid. Okay. And I was fortunate enough where my parents would hook me up with like packs of cards for birthdays or this or that. And I ended up with like a couple decent ones that were like would win in the game or whatever. And it got pretty big at my school. And what we would do is we'd sit at these little tables at recess. And I was like, oh, these kids want to play super bad. And there's starting to be like this currency to these Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is I would play somebody, and I was like, hey man, I'll tell you what, like, you think, you know, you're pretty good, your deck of cards is bigger than mine or whatever, I'll tell you what, I'll play you for your deck. And we'd play Yu-Gi-Oh, and of course, like, you'd shuffle your cards and have all your best ones at the top, and you'd beat somebody and be like, all right, cool, those are my Yu-Gi-Oh cards now. And so it was I was like, I was a bit of a shark when I was a kid, but I think so, like, that was kind of a funny little thing where I was like, you can get things by competing, by thinking a little bit different and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But I think what my big moment where I realized that I had to be an entrepreneur wasn't until I was like probably 22. The way that my dad raised me, he's a very thoughtful, well-read, like introspective kind of person. Mm-hmm. And he always encouraged me to like what is the thing behind the thing? Yeah. And so when it's in school, like, they're going to tell you names, dates, and places, but they're not going to tell you why something happened. Sure. And so it put me in this place where I was constantly thinking about, like, okay, if I'm doing this job, what's the why behind that? What function am I doing for somebody? What am I getting out of it? What is my life going to look like? And when I was 22, I ended up in a position where I was working at a marketing agency with a guy who was a serial entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Started and sold a couple companies, and I essentially, when I took this job, I was like, I'll take a smaller salary on the front end, but I would really like to help you grow this agency. That was just him at the time. And I'd like to see some upside from that, because I tend to be a bit more entrepreneurial. I think it'd be a fun venture to learn at when I'm young. And over the course of about 2 years, we added 4 or 5 employees. Had some really big retainers. He was a very, very talented, still is a very talented business person. But with all that growth, my undefined bonus in 2 years turned out to be $0. And at the time, I had some friends who were real estate agents, and they were like starting to get into their thing. And I would hear about the successes that they were having, and I would see the way that they were working and like the kind of time that they were spending on stuff. And I worked at a place that was an hour commute both ways. And so what really started eating at me was, every single day that I got in the car, I remember I spent that hour-long drive thinking about if I spent this 10 hours a week on real estate, what could that look like? Sure. If I spent it on my own venture, what could it look like? How far would I be in a year? You know, if I've got 52 weeks in a year, let's say 50. You got 2 weeks of vacation. That's 500 hours where I could be working on something. Like, how far would I be if I was doing that?
Yeah.
Plus, I was spending 10 hours plus at the office every day.
That's insane.
And so I really think that drive is what really like forced me into entrepreneurship, is because that really like, it's like a Chinese water torture. Like every day was like a raindrop on my forehead of being like, if you were spending this time doing anything else, you know that you could be good at this. You got good at the marketing thing earlier. Most things that I picked up, I could like start to gain some progress at. So I really think that was the biggest thing, is I just like, it drove me crazy thinking about how much freedom and how much progress I could be making if I were dedicating my energy to anything else other than building somebody else's dream.
Yeah. And I think like with that too, you know, because there's obviously something stopping you for 2 years, you know, and whether it be the idea that there might be like this future bonus or this future, like, you know, inkling of whatever that this guy, you know, could give you, or it's just like the fear of the unknown, you know, outside of that. Like, I know this, I know like that this works, I know that I'm decently good at it, but what do I not know? Why do you think it took you 2 years? Like, what was the catalyst to finally break the camel's back that really put you over the edge, where you're just like, the risk is okay, I'm okay with failing? Yeah,
really, I think it was, I didn't have confidence in my skill set yet. And so during those 2 years, I kind of had that thing in the back of my head where I wasn't just working for the guy, but I was also trying to pay attention to, what does your sales process look like? How do you run this business? And to me, that was my post-secondary education. Like, I didn't go get an MBA. I didn't do any of that stuff, but I approached that 2 years like I was getting an MBA that I was being paid for, or like I was trying to figure out like, what are the things that I need to know in the real business world, because in business school and college, it's a lot of like, it's worksheets. Like, you have no skin in the game. So for me, I didn't feel like I was good enough to run a business yet. And I didn't feel like I knew exactly like what I would be selling, how I could provide value. And so I think that taking those 2 years really got me to the point where I was like, okay, I think I kind of understand this. I got put in a really fortunate situation where I think it was like kind of what allowed me to jump ship and do the dang thing. Where one of the clients that I was the lead on essentially was a med tech company, and they sold 3D printed devices to both physicians and to other industry players. And being a lead on that, I ended up at a trade show in Colorado Springs as like marketing support, and the VP took a liking to me. I kind of got bored at the trade show, and I was like, I want to go try to sell some stuff. Like, what are the things that I need to know about? Came back with a stack of business cards. I think a couple of them turned into paid gigs, and they're $30,000 products. So he's like, what do you think about just going and doing these trade shows with me? And so for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, I ended up traveling around with these trade shows to this VP of this medical device company. And I was super green. You know, I was 22 years old, and luckily I've got one heck of a receding hairline, so I looked a little bit older than I was at the time. But I was selling these medical devices to, you know, reps who are, everybody's got a Rolex on, everybody's got a beautiful tailored suit, these guys are doing very well. And I think that the perspective of, if I can just figure out how to sell and how to talk to people and like figure out how to provide value, I can figure out what I need to be selling, but this is going to be the thing that like really propels me into being able to do my own thing.
Yeah. And so getting into that job with that guy, as far as it was marketing agency, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Were you always wanting to go into like a creative like field, as far as wanting to be a creative or wanting to be someone that is creating? Like, what made you want to go that direction specifically? Because like a lot of times you get into business, or you learn something and then you jump into something else that you were interested in, but you were already interested in that thing. And I think that's where it makes it even harder to leave, because you're like, I actually like this.
Right. For sure. Yeah, no, it's much like we were talking about earlier. It's I kind of had what I call the curse of competence, and it's a lot of the things that I enjoyed about business I could get pretty good at fairly quickly. And so during school, I was really good at accounting, I was really good at finance, I really enjoyed my business management and like the people side of stuff. And I thought that I wanted to be a financial advisor. And because I was like, you can kind of do some people stuff, you can provide real value, you can have impact. So I honestly wasn't particularly looking at going into marketing or any of that kind of stuff. I actually met the guy because I was doing a financial advising internship, and I was doing an unpaid internship with a startup called Moochdocker that was kind of like an Airbnb for motorhomes kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
And so the reason that I took that job in marketing was because it was the most entrepreneurial type of thing that I could do and still get paid for it. And so really, I think I was in a spot where I think I just got really fortunate that the cards fell how they did, and I ended up in an industry where there is storytelling, it is creative, like there's so many cool things about it. Because I think I was in danger of becoming an accountant or having a very boring job if that didn't happen.
Yeah, I know. I think about that all the time too, where I think, if I had gotten a girl pregnant, way younger, or if I, even if I didn't go to college, and I think that if I would have went to college, I probably wouldn't have ended up as an entrepreneur, honestly, like in a weird way, because I probably would have, I got a girlfriend and started getting like legit bills and things like that. And I started my business when I was 23, and I was living in a $500, apartment. I was making like $1,500 a month, you know, and I was just selling all day long every day. And there's just no other type or opportunity in my life where I could have done that. Right. I could have had nothing, didn't really need anything, like was just out there grinding and not caring about anybody but me, type idea. Yeah. And so I do think about that sometimes too, if I would have got in with, if I would have gotten an accounting degree or would have got one of those things and gotten the 9-to-5 job and just been stuck there knowing that I shouldn't be there, but the risk of leaving is just hard. And I definitely sympathize with people that are trying to like start things when they're older. It's just a different type of giant. For sure. I think there's two things that really resonate with me on that one. And the first one is I think that jobs like that are golden handcuffs. And I think the reason why is because you get paid, good enough money where you can, maybe you can buy a house, you can have kids, you can support a family, you can do all these things. But then you end up in a position where, like you said, you've got bills, so you've got your mortgage, maybe you have a car payment, you've got some kids to put through school and all these things. So instead of being in that position where it's like, I can eat ramen if I need to, and I have roommates, I don't have anything riding on this right now. I think that it becomes really easy when you're making the kind of money that you can support and start to do the life things that you care about, which you shouldn't not do those. You should definitely do those. But I think it puts you in a really hard position because the risk that you're taking, you're not just risking your future, you're risking other people's futures too. And anytime that somebody asks me about making that jump, again, I was younger too, so I had a lot less on the table. But the way that I looked at it was that when you're leaving a venture, I think that you can risk one of two things. I think that you can risk your time or you can risk your money. I was in a position where I was not willing to risk the money, and so I risked my time. And I think that kind of the give or take there is, if you choose to risk your time, then you'll probably stay in the job that you have now. If you're making $75K a year, you'll still make all of that stuff. But that's when you have a 9-to-5 and then you've got a 5-to-9. Yeah. And so what comes with that is, yes, you have your money and you're not going to take that huge pay cut, go to zero potential thing to build your dream, but you're sacrificing all of the dinners, the going out with friends, all of that kind of stuff for the security of having your money. So what it looked like for me was I was working 80-hour weeks, and I had my day job where I was doing the thing, and I knew that if I was making, I think my number was $4,000 a month. It's like, if I can make $4,000 a month, then I will be able to still take my girlfriend out to dinner. I'll still be able to pay rent. I'll still be able to travel a little bit. My quality of life will not change that much. And once that happens, then I will leave this other job and I'll have that parachute to land on. So that's risking your time. And I think that risking the money is when you've got an idea that you're passionate about, or you've got, I really think it's beautiful for the people that don't have a ton of other futures that are riding on their decisions, where they can essentially be like, I'm putting my 2 weeks in, I'm going to zero,
and I'm going to be like, as much time as I want to spend on this thing, it can go as fast as I, apply myself to it.
And I think for me, the one thing that I know about myself is that unless I create some sort of scenario, whether real or not real, inside my head, that makes it so that I have to achieve something, then I probably won't.
Say more about that. That's super interesting.
So like in your scenario where you're just risking your time, so you have this job and you're working 9 to 5, and then you go and you work, working from 5 to 9, with your other projects or whatnot. Mm-hmm. To me, that wouldn't never work for me, because there's not enough of a consequence riding on it. You've got probably more money coming in than you have in a very long time, right? So like that's comfortable. So then you get more and more comfortable, and you're just like, I can just continue to do the 5 to 9 thing, add another $100,000 onto my year.
I'll just do both now.
And I'll just do both. This is just how I am. Yeah. Where for me, like I constantly have to create scenarios of being desperate. I never like act desperate in business. I never want to act desperate, but creating a desperate feeling of like that I need something. And from there, that's where like all the drive and motivation like comes. Like when I dropped everything, kind of like risked the money on my side, where dropped everything, I started my business, and I was knocking like 20 businesses a day for like 3 months and didn't get a single contract.
Ooh, that's some character building right there, baby.
But from there, it was just like, I'm making $1,500 a month. I have to find something. I have to do something. I have to like accomplish and like succeed. Like there is no other option for me. And so I kind of create those scenarios in my everyday a lot of the time, where I'll create like, this has to happen. Yeah. And it's so much easier to make more money than to save money. And so like I'll look at something and I'll be like, oh, I want that boat, or I want that. And we're just like, how many more contracts do I need to get that boat? And then like that boat is my fire of like thing. It was like, oh, I'm gonna get that boat. I'm getting that boat. So I'll create these things. And with my son, it's kind of evolved into he's 5 months old, and so there's just this constant like fire and this constant like drive, where there's not so much of a need for me to externally create those scenarios. Where having him is just always there. It's just like, I just always need more. It's like there'll never be enough. Like I will always like want to accomplish more. Yeah. Not just for the money side of it, but for the resume side of it. Like I just want to have an undeniable resume that my son and my grandkids and whoever can look at my life and like, there is no denying that I did something that's worth why.
Is there multiple layers to that, where part of that might be from being able to be an inspiration to them and a role model, and then part of it might be like supporting them, being able to provide for them too? Or what are like the layers of that motivation for you?
One of like the earliest memories that I have, which is kind of a weird memory.
Okay, yeah.
I was really young. I don't know how young I was, but I was like just staring at my ceiling, and I just had this huge like feeling of like, I don't want to be forgotten. Like I just thought about my life and thought about like things that were happening, and there's like, it would be so easy to be forgotten. Yeah. And in actuality, no matter how famous you are, no matter like how good you are, you're 2 generations from like basically being forgotten.
Pretty much.
And so from there, it was like, what can I do? Like, I need to do something in my life that's like worth remembering. Okay. And from there, it's just evolved into, business and, traveling and accomplishing things and doing a lot of new things and putting myself in uncomfortable scenarios and really trying to like grow and learn as fast as I can, so that I can transfer that to my kids and transfer that to my son, of that desire and that want to achieve more, and to like not be scared to say yes and not be scared to try new things. And failing is like a very necessary part of like the process of learning and growth, and like you should be trying to fail as much as you possibly can. And then looking back at my life and just being like, okay, like I did fill it up with opportunities. I did fill it up with like meaningful things. I did fill it up with like not only like achievements in business and things like that, but also one of the greatest things that I found in business is helping others see the potential that is inside themselves and really go after it.
1,000%. Yeah, that's one of the biggest motivations that I have right now. I was talking about this with a friend the other day that I think that your motivation almost has to change throughout the course of business because, your motivation when you're making $1,500 a month is going to be a lot different than your motivation when you're 10 years in and you've got 50 employees.
Yeah.
And so I'm hitting a phase right now where, at the beginning of the business, it was how can I pay my bills? How can I get clients that I'm excited about and actually provide value? How can I create my first travel trip where I get to travel for my business? Like there were so many of these motivations, but a lot of it was based around survival. And so getting to a point where having a small team and having some growth where we've kind of figured out like where our sweet spots are and we just essentially need to scale now. I think the motivation changes where for me, the most intrinsically motivating part about my media business right now is figuring out how I can take creatives who might be shooting weddings on the weekend, they might be doing little side projects, they might be nature photographers or whatever they are, who don't believe that they can create a living for themselves by doing their passion and being like, no, your skill set is there. I'm going to put you in a position where you can succeed and you can quit your job as a ranch hand or you can quit your job as fill in whatever filler thing that they're doing. And that for me is such a big motivation now where instead of having a financial goal for like, this is what our monthly recurring revenue needs to be, because that number is bigger than the one that we have right now. And it's going to be really cool to say at a cocktail party, right? It's like the motivation actually becomes, okay, my goal is to have this amount of income coming in because that means that I'll be able to change one more person's life. Exactly. And instead of them being able, like working for me 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, they can come and do this full time. And every day they get to show up being stoked about working. And I'm going to watch them transform from this like kind of like freelance, but working a day job kind of person that I'm seeing sitting in front of me right now to somebody who in a couple months is going to be stoked that they're showing up and on their team meetings, they're going to be like telling us about these documentary project they just did and all that stuff. So much like you're saying about entrepreneurship, being able to see people flourish and like help them discover that about themselves. This has been one of the first phases where like I've actually been able to like lean into that and make that the motivation instead of the money part, the survival part and that sort of deal.
Yeah, I think that it adds such a different layer of things, and it just, to me, it's a natural progression and something that has to happen for you to actually want to continue and want to scale. And there's such a crazy feeling when you come around to Christmas time and you have, and I have different like types of people that work for me than you do, but it comes around to Christmas time and like you've had someone that at the start of the year was homeless and now they have a house and a car and like things, and or you have one of your managers that that their entire Christmas is provided by their hard work, but also like something that you created.
Yeah,
and something
absolutely.
that you're able to like get, help with. And one thing that I had to learn in the process of like my journey of wanting to help people, like you were talking about, of taking that person, helping them realize their potential, was you have to get really, really good at helping people realize what they actually want.
Interesting.
Because so many people think that they want to be the business owner. They think that they want to be, X, Y, and Z. And what they actually want is just to be like an account manager, or they just want to be, the creative. But they look at like the dollars that are attached to certain things, and that's what they think that they want. And so what I've been able to do is help people create scenarios and put them into different opportunities that really help them understand what it is that they actually want. And not necessarily what they actually want, but what is it that's going to make you feel the most successful and make you the most happy. Because I promise you will hate your life if you were me. Like, you want to be me, you think you want to be me, but the things that I do, you would not do well with, like the stress and the things that like I can just naturally just kind of roll off my shoulders and just not affect me.
Yeah.
That would be crippling to you.
Absolutely.
But you just don't understand that yet.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, it's interesting. I just had this moment yesterday when we were walking around downtown. I had this North Face jacket that I saw, and I was like, that puffer coat is cooler than the one that I have right now. It's like it has 4 puffs instead of 30. And I was like, I really like the way it looks and all this stuff. When we walked into the store and I realized that once I looked at the price tag, it was $330. And I was like, I don't like the jacket that much. And also it's only going to be a couple weeks that I can wear it. But I think that happens a lot of times to people who, I don't care if it's a new job that you want, if it's whatever it is, you see the coat, but you don't see the price tag. Like you see
I like that.
how warm I can be in that coat, how cool I'm going to feel, how many compliments I'm going to get. But what you don't see is like that $330 can represent so many different things. And for entrepreneurship, it can represent like they don't have anybody right now that's going to call them at 10 p.m. because something went wrong. And they don't have the stress of if a couple of our accounts disappear, then it's going to be really hard to make payroll. And I have to find a way to hire 4 more people. And hopefully there's 4 good people in the world that want to work for me. Like there's so many things that I think that people see the coat and not the price tag. And it becomes tricky because sometimes you're in a position where you fucked up and bought the coat and you didn't know that you're going to have to pay for it. And you end up in a position where maybe you quit your job and now you're full in it. It's like, this is not what I was looking for. Or, you moved or you did something like that. And I think that there's a lot of like learning and character development that can come from stuff like that. But I hate to see people, I guess, like envying or getting jealous or getting something like that because something looks really cool or because something looks like it's something that they might want. But if they actually knew what the price tag was on it, they'd be like, no, I'm actually just really happy with what I've got right now.
Exactly. And everyone needs to find their spot, where they're going to be the most happy. And what I've come to the conclusion with, because when I first started my businesses and things like that, I was young and I was just like, everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Every single person needs to own a business. There's no other way of life, type idea.
Yeah.
And then as I got older and I introduced people to entrepreneurship and things, I realized I am doing such a huge disservice to this person by encouraging them to do something that I know that they're not really, really capable of doing. Yeah. And so from there, I feel like you just get better and better and better about reading people and truly understanding individuals and helping and guiding them and leading them to come to their own conclusion on that side of it. Yeah. Owning a business would be cool, but honestly, I just really love managing the social media for X, Y, and Z. Yeah, for real. Or shooting or being, shooting video or just being the audio guy or just whatever it is. It's just I'm really good at that. And that's what I find the most passion and joy in life. And if I was to come along and say why are you just shooting video? You should be doing this for yourself. You should be out there doing your own business. You know how easy it is to go and get a wedding, to shoot for or whatever. Yeah. And you can make this much more money. And then that guy does that. And like you said, it's just, there's so much to that price tag that you don't understand. And I've tried to create scenarios inside my business that allow people to experience the consequences of a price tag without purchasing.
That's really, really cool.
To where you have someone that's motivated and they come to you and they say, hey, Drew, I really want to try and do this on my own. I think that I'm capable of this. And you're like, hey, that's awesome. I want you to do it too. Right. There's so much room in this world for any type of business, all types of business. You, me, everybody, we can all win. Yeah. But with that, what do you think about me, just giving you a little bit more responsibility here, and here, and give you some of these things that I handle to help you kind of experience what it feels like to do this. Yeah. And then just slowly add things to them in that way, give them little tests, give them little tastes, of different things at that price. That is a natural consequence of, owning that business. And a lot of people will very quickly realize like, oh, I didn't realize this is what's involved. I didn't know that this is like the stress that comes along with it.
Right. I think some people, I would imagine that there will be times too where people are like, yeah, no, I love this. Like, I love the responsibility, but it's really cool that you've created an environment where people can, like you said, like try the coat on, wear it out to a date or two, and like, and not have to pay the price tag yet.
Yeah. And the hard part is that when someone comes along and they love all the things that have to do with the price tag, you're just like, oh, dang it. This person is going to leave, and they're so great. And I really wish that they would stay with my company forever because they make my life easier because they are capable of doing this. And like, if I really want to be who I say that I am, I do have the responsibility now to help this person get to that next level because I know and they know that it's possible for them, and so I have to.
You've also opened Pandora's box at that point too, where like I think that at that point you have done such a huge service. I mean, really to their lives, and I think that that's I think that you can benefit them more by letting them go and like encourage them to do as many things inside of your company as you have, than to keep them in that company just because they're still a value to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that once you open that box and you've showed them, here's what it looks like to be an owner, here's the responsibilities, and they are like, check, let's do this.
Yeah.
I think at that point, you both know that they don't belong in that seat anymore.
Yeah.
And so by keeping them around, they would probably turn out to be a worse team member than before they had all of those experiences.
I think that like as long as you have a really frank conversation with them on that, I was just like, hey, I'm telling you, you should go and do this on your own. But if you want to stay with me, I love it. I want you to be here. You do amazing. I know that you find joy in it. But also, I'm also telling you, you shouldn't be with me.
Yeah.
You should go and do it on your own. And like, I'm with you. I want to do that. Like, but some people just still, even after that point of understanding, hey, this is possible for me. There's too much risk. There's too much unknowns attached to it, and then from there it becomes like a really great opportunity. I think for me, one thing that I do with my company is every single time someone leaves my company, I want them to be leaving for something that's going to make them more happy, right? Like whether even when I fire people, I'm firing them because I want them to be more happy. And I explain that to them. It's like, hey, like I'm firing you because you suck X, Y, and Z, but also you suck because you're not happy. You suck because you don't like this.
Right.
Please go find something that you like. Please, like you can't work for me anymore, but go and work for somebody that you're actually going to enjoy what you do. Like, don't keep doing this to yourself.
Right.
You know, like
so important.
And having that perspective of like every single person that I bring on or every single person that you bring on, like I want when they leave it to be a benefit to their life, you know, and that they're leaving me to either go do something greater or they're leaving because they understand that this is not something that, you know, gives them motivation. Yeah,
100%. I think one of the biggest things that I took from that VP of the med tech company that I was traveling with is he talked about work-life alignment a lot, and he hated the term work-life balance. And the perspective shift that he had, to give a little bit of context, is that as a VP and a sales guy in a med tech company, I think that he said that the previous year he was on the road for like 250 to 300 days. And he had kids who were in college. He had a wife in Florida, like all of these things. And he's not really there a whole lot. And for him, what he talked about is he was like, if you looked at my life and you asked about work-life balance, it is very clear that does not exist. But what does exist is work-life alignment. And he's like, I enjoy building companies. I enjoy being this role in a company where I'm not the CEO, but I'm helping in XYZ. And he's like, and me and my wife love to travel. And so what we'll do is if let's say I've got a trade show in Vegas. We were out doing this thing and his wife flew out for like 4 days while we were there. And they spent 2 days on the front end hanging out, doing their thing. He was working while she was hanging out at the pool and like seeing a friend and some stuff like that. And then all left together. Where, yes, technically you're on a work trip and you're on the road and stuff like that, but it's aligned because he's doing something he enjoys. He still gets to spend time with his wife and they got to travel together. And so to me, I think that can exist in so many different ways where his ideal alignment was being super in on the work thing. I look at people who are like bartenders sometimes who clearly love what they do, and I have sometimes a ton of envy for them.
Oh yeah.
Where there might be, you know, a perception of like, oh, really, you're still bartending or this or that. I think that is one of the most like shallow and short-sighted ways to look at certain professions. Is like, this person gets to, like, they tend to be a night owl, so check there. They love sleeping in a little bit. They love going to the gym. They like to be able to leave work at work. They love to talk to people. Like, a bartender checks all of their boxes, and they get to love what they do every day.
Yeah.
I would argue that person is so much more successful than somebody who's working on Wall Street because they feel like they have to. And during the first 5 years when they're an analyst, they're working 70 or 80 hours and like hating their lives. Yeah. I would argue that even with the finances considered, that the bartender is still wildly more successful if they love what they do every day than the person who might make $250,000 and is miserable the entire time.
No, exactly. Like, I have that thought all the time, you know, where even like some of my team members, I look at their lives and I think, man, like, I wish that I could live like you.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Like, I wish that like that would be enough for me. And like, and also with like, you know, personalized stuff, like, I have to jump off cliffs and jump out of planes and stuff to have fun. Yeah. Like, I envy the guy that can walk through a park and read a book and just be satisfied with life. Like, I can't do that. I have to like do these really stupid things that make me feel like I'm doing something, you know? And it's just kind of the life that we're given, you know, but I love that. And I love searching for that in people. And I love like figuring that out for individuals. Like, what is it that's going to like give you that peace and that, you know, want and that drive of feeling like I am successful in life, wherever that is on the spectrum of money and time and success or whatnot. And that's my goal with like the people that work for me, is that they are in that, you know, that they are comfortable, that they are, you know, feeling like they're doing something that's worthwhile. Yeah,
it's one of the most important things ever. I think too, one of the things that hit me really hard was I went through a big breakup at the end of last year that kind of like reframed a lot of things, and it was a very good time to like take inventory and be like, okay, what things actually matter. I actually like went through that breakup and had the exit meeting for my head of operations in my business in the same 2 hours. I knew one of them was happening. I did not know the other one was happening. So it was a big day. But the person I leaned on the most in my personal life and in my professional life were both gone at the same time. Wow. And so what was great about that is like, on the personal relationship, I like did a bunch of stupid stuff that I made my bed, had to lay in it. And, it gave me this perspective where I was like, okay, I've got, not to restart my business, but I've got a month or two where I'm going to be very picky about this hire. I'm going to be very picky about the things to do in my personal relationship because I've got all this time on my hands now. And, the thing that I figured out was I was working really hard at working hard, but it was the only thing I was working hard at. And so if it was anything related to growing the business, to networking, to sales, to team stuff, I would show up for that 100% of the time. But anything in my personal life, I was not showing up as the best version of myself for anything. Like, I was skipping workouts for business. I was skipping making dinner with my girlfriend for business. I was skipping friend stuff. I was like, the only thing that I was working hard at was the quote unquote hard work that everybody preaches you need to be, you know, doing all this stuff for. Yeah. And so the biggest reframe for me, as I was thinking about the skydiving and stuff like that, is like, yes, it is very important to find what your work, you know, balance is and the things that drive you and all of that, and like what you're okay being like satisfied with. But I also think that it reframed for me to start setting goals in my personal life too. Yeah. And for me, it was like, okay, well, how do I want my friends to feel when I show up? You know, like, do I want to be the guy where they're like, oh yeah, if he shows up, like, that'd be cool. If he can make it, like, somebody shoot him a text, that'd be cool. Or is it like, dude, we're doing this Christmas party. We got to make sure that like Drew can make it. So let's like, you know, let's hit him up. Let's figure out blah, 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 blah. And I was just checking in on so many things because I was so wrapped up in the business thing. So I think that like with all of that success kind of stuff too, it's very important to figure out what success looks like outside of your business also. Like what is success as a friend, as a brother, as a son, as all of these different things, because it's so much harder to measure, right? Like you can't really measure, did somebody plan a thing around you being able to be there?
Yeah.
You can't really measure what they say about you when you're gone, but it's really easy to measure what your monthly revenue looks like.
Yeah.
So I think that figuring out like what does success look like outside of just the business thing is something that I've taken the last 6 months or so and really tried to figure out that piece also, because it changes some of the goals in business as well.
Dude, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think it's something that I definitely need to be better at in my life for sure, of making sure that the priorities around like those things are just as important as the priorities inside a business. I think when you first start a business, there is no balance ever.
For sure.
Like your first four years, you don't have a life. You have a business, and that business is everything. And like, if you want to have any level of success, it kind of has to be that way.
And you're rewarded for it.
You're definitely rewarded for it. But then after that, like you get into year 5, year 6, if you haven't figured out that you can have something outside of that, then you're failing at business. Like if you haven't figured out that, okay, I need to make sure that this starts to work for my personal life as well. I need to do things that are for me. I need to like bring stuff in. I need to like pay attention and to the other people that are outside of my business and in my life that I want to have value with. I need to have those sports or those things that I can go and decompress and like have a little bit of a break from. But yeah, like I think it's hard for me to say that, because if I'm talking to someone that's just starting a business, you can't do that.
Right.
That's a fairy tale. Like you will never have that for the first few years. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
It's part of the price tag.
It will freaking suck. Yeah. It's a pain tax that will always be there.
Yeah.
And you have to pay it. If you want to make a certain amount of money, you want to have a certain amount of freedom, there are consequences to that. Mm-hmm. And it comes in the first few years. But with that being said, is that it doesn't have to last forever. And if it does last forever, you're probably a little bit of a douchebag.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember in my first year, I was, I already kind of have this predisposition where my brain is just like redlining most of the time. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship adds kerosene to that fire. Yeah. So for me, I mean, I went from my brain spinning on a lot of stuff at that marketing agency I was working at, where I was like, how can I get out of this job? How can I do my job that I'm in better? What's this transition going to look like? But I had security. As soon as I started my own thing, all of the stuff of now I'm an accountant, now I'm a marketing person, now I'm a business, I had all the business functions, but I also had this like crushing reality that all of my clients could call me on one day and that everything would go to zero. Yeah. And I remember in that first year, I was working my ass off to try to like get to the point where I could hire an assistant and then hire some content creators and just like try to get some stuff off of my plate, because I was so fucking busy all the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember like the pinnacle of that moment for me was I was going to hot yoga at the time. And my goal was the entire time during hot yoga, I wanted to try and have 10 seconds where my feet were. And I was like, I was not good at yoga, but I'd be getting my ass kicked and like, having this really hard moment. And I would still be thinking about a post that needed to go out or a person that I needed to hire, or like, I literally could not turn it off. And I was like, I wanted to get so exhausted, so hot, so like uncomfortable that I could at least be uncomfortable for 10 seconds, but only be focusing on how hard this is right now. Yeah. And you have to be willing to do that. Yeah. And I think that's it's a very positive thing for me to look back on now, because I know that I can push myself to that point and like continue going. Not that I want to get there again, but I think you're right. It's like it is kind of a tax that you have to pay to get to the other side of that.
Yeah, and that's something that people really don't understand. And I'll give you like a huge cheat code if you ever want to like be in the moment.
get a parachute and start base jumping.
Dude, that's exactly what it is. And that will become so freaking addicting to you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, because like you said, like I'm the same way. My brain is constantly all the time, every single day, thinking about things that need to get done, or things that could get done. And like, I can't sit down, because when I'm sitting down, all I'm thinking about is something that I could be doing. That's going to.
I could be getting my steps in right now while I'm on this meeting.
So right around like year 6 or something like that, it was just, I had hit all the goals that I wanted to hit, right? And like, then you're sitting there and you're just like, I'm not any more happy than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I've had all this pain that has cost me to get here, like relationships and friends and like whatever it is. I paid all this, so that I can have this. And now that I have it, this sucks. This really, really sucks. And trying to get past that spot in life, and I was sitting there, I was like, man, if this is all that it is, like, why?
For what?
For what? And so that's when I started skydiving. Skydiving, I think, saved my life, because I got into skydiving in the way of like, if I die skydiving, that's probably okay.
Right.
And then you jump out of a plane and you're just like, oh, I really don't ever want to die.
For sure. Yeah.
But the crazy thing that happens is that when you leave the plane, or it's way more evident in base jumping, like when you run off that cliff, the moment that your feet leave the cliff, every single problem in your life stays on that cliff. The only things that leave that cliff with you are the best things in your life. The best relationships, the best moments, everything that's good that is in your life stays with you on the way down. And so you leave that cliff, all the stresses of life, and you're just solely in this peaceful, serene moment that, it's just you.
Yeah.
And you open up your parachute and it's great, and you survived and you land on the ground, and like that peace and that reality of like, all these things that I'm stressing about don't matter. All the things that, stayed with you on that cliff when you land, stay with you for a period of time, after that. And that's why, like, we do it. That's why you're out there, and it's not about adrenaline. People think it's an adrenaline thing and that you're just some crazy person.
Yeah, junkie.
No, it's like you leave that cliff and it's the most peaceful meditation you'll ever have in your entire life.
Are you intentional, or do you make it a point to say, like, when I do this jump, I'm leaving this, and this behind, and this is what I want to take with me? Or is it just kind of a baked in benefit?
No, it's just a baked in benefit. And that's a beautiful thing of it. Sometimes you don't realize what it is that's going to come with you. Yeah. And so I'll do base jumps, and any base jumper shouldn't do this, but I'll do base jumps where I don't tell anyone that I'm going. It's just me. I'm going to this cliff out in the middle of nowhere. No one knows that I'm going there. It's so stupid, because like, chances of you dying are like pretty dang high, right? And so you out there, no one knows that you're there. You're just gonna die, and no one's gonna know where you were, right? But with that, like, there's something interesting that happens when you do one of these kind of journeys. Like, I'll go, I don't tell anyone, and on the hike up, you're like hiking to the top of the cliff, and you're thinking about your life, and you're just pondering things about everything that's going on, and like all the stress and all the problems, and you also think about the good things and stuff like that. And then you gear up, you're on the edge of the cliff, and you're getting ready, and there's a moment where you just decide that, like, this is happening. Whether the wind's good, or you make that decision. Okay, like, you come to the realization, I am gonna jump off this cliff. Yeah. And then you start this countdown, and like, every base jumper usually has a countdown that they do, and usually it's 3, 2, 1, see ya. But a lot of people, they'll say different things. Like, I don't know, they'll say stupid stuff. But like, you do the countdown, and it's a weird phenomenon and I've never done it with anything else in my life. Like, if I'm jumping off a cliff into water, I never do it. Right. Just because I think it's stupid. I hate it. I hate when people are like, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. But when base jumping, there's something weird psychologically that happens in your brain where as soon as you start that countdown, all the fear that you're feeling just starts to evaporate out of your body. You know, it just like goes away because your body knows that countdown signals that you are leaving this cliff.
Yeah.
And so there's no more fear because the thing that you're scared of is happening.
Right.
You know, like.
Yeah. And fear becomes a useless emotion at that point.
Exactly. And so your body just evaporates. There is no more fear once that countdown starts. Before that, you're scared just like everyone else. You're just terrified. You don't want to do it. That countdown starts. There's no more fear because your body's like, okay, now we're in the moment of saving our life.
Yeah.
You know, like now we have to do something to not die.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And so you leave the cliff, and then all of a sudden all those things come in, and you never know what's going to like stay on the cliff and what's going to come with you. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what's beautiful about it. And a lot of it is just calm and peaceful. And like, there's nothing like your mind being that completely silent and serene that makes life so much more worth living.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Dude, it's so beautiful. And I've, this is like a thing that keeps on coming up. The more people that I talk to that are business owners, creatives, people who are like full in on something. Mm-hmm. And we kind of coined a name for it, my buddy Clay and I, called forced presence. And I think people get it in a lot of different ways. For me, I train MMA, so like boxing, jiu-jitsu, all of that kind of stuff. I played college sports, and the thing that I found that I loved about playing sports was it was 2 hours 5 times a week at least that everything in the rest of the world disappeared.
Yeah.
So when I was at football practice, I was like, I wasn't worried about my homework. I wasn't worried about my friends. I wasn't worried about like so many different things. All I had to do was focus on whatever the play was and just executing. And then as soon as you leave, you know, you've got that like, you know, high for 20, 30 minutes, and then things start coming back and real life kicks in and whatever. But when I graduated college and I stopped playing football, I realized I was like, oh, there's nothing left in my life right now that is going to make everything else go away.
Yeah.
I tried with hot yoga. That didn't work. And really, like, what I did, I only took a month off, and I still had a lot of nagging injuries and stuff from playing college sports, and went directly into jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And yes, there were the benefits of, like, doing something athletic and defending yourself and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I needed that forced presence where I knew that the world was going to be crazy around me. I knew that there's going to be all of the stuff that comes with life, but I needed that escape where it was like, you cannot be thinking about whatever it is when you just yeeted yourself off a cliff or when somebody's trying to choke you unconscious or when somebody's, you know, boxing against you. So I think that people have different versions of it, whether like regardless of what the flavor is, but I think that result of forced presence where you can't think about all of the other things that are constantly in your mind. I think that it's so important for people to find that somewhere because I think it puts into perspective the little things that you're stressing about are probably not that big of a deal because you can, when you realize that like, dude, I just did this thing for 20 minutes and then that thing is not as big of a deal as I thought it was.
Yeah.
I think it keeps from that thing that tends to happen where like something's on your plate or it's on your stress regimen and it just builds day after day after day and there's no release valve.
Yeah, exactly. I freaking love that forced presence. That you definitely need to merch that
up. We'll get you a sticker to throw on your base jumping gear, dude.
Because if you talk to anybody, they're in that's why they do it. And there's a lot of people that come back from combat that get into base jumping because they say it's the only thing that gets them in that same force presence as being in like a firefight or whatever it is, you know, that they go through in combat. Well, dude, I've really, really appreciated talking with you, and it's been super educational for me, and I've gained so much just from this conversation.
Likewise, man.
Yeah, if you could just plug whatever you want to plug,
all the stuff.
For your business and podcast and social,
whatever
it is that you want to do.
Dude, this was super fun. I love what you're doing. You're very easy to talk to. I love the pod and everything that's going on. So if you guys haven't been able to tell so far, I love being a chatty Cathy, and I have a podcast as well. It's called Pressed for Presence. So you can follow me there or just at Drew Korf on all the stuff, Instagram and TikTok and the rest of it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody.
Bye.
Adios.